The organ's thunderous chords shook the rafters of St. Paul's Church in Portland, Oregon. But it was the weight of the tiny recorder in my pocket that made my knees buckle. I stood at the altar, my vintage lace gown my mother's choice. Not mine clinging to my skin like a lie I couldn't shed. My heart didn't race with love. It hammered with rage, betrayal, and a cold, crystalline certainty that today, everything would change. 250 faces stared up at me-tech brothers in tailored suits. Baristas from the coffee shop I haunted, my newsroom rivals itching for a scoop. They thought they were here for a wedding. They were wrong. In my pocket, a recording burned. Like a live coal, proof that my fiancé, Ethan Caldwell, and my mother, Margaret Harper, had been screwing me over literally and figuratively for months. 48 hours ago, I believed in love. Now, I believed in justice. And I was about to serve it, ice-cold, to a room full of witnesses. It was October 23rd, 2025, a crisp Pacific Northwest morning. The sun sliced through the church's modern, stained glass windows, throwing jagged rainbows across the polished oak floor. Portland buzzed outside food trucks, bike commuters, the hum of a city obsessed with craft beer and progressive ideals. St. Paul's, with its sleek architecture and community vibe, was the perfect stage for a wedding that was supposed to scream modern fairy tale. I'm Olivia Harper, 29, a rising investigative journalist at the Oregonian. I've spent years digging up dirt on corrupt politicians and shady CEOs. But nothing prepared me for the filth I'd uncover in my own family. My fiancé, Ethan Caldwell, 33, is the golden boy of Portland's tech scene, CEO of a startup poised to revolutionize AI-driven healthcare. His father, Richard Caldwell, a Seattle venture capitalist, bankrolled Ethan's rise, and his name opened every door in the Northwest. Ethan's charm was magnetic blue eyes, a sharp jaw, and a laugh that could disarm a room. I fell hard 3 years ago at a tech conference after party when he quoted Vonnegut and bought me a whiskey neat. My mother, Margaret, 54, is a PR queen who spins narratives for Portland's elite. Polished, blonde, and always in control. She's the kind of woman who can make a room of strangers adore her in 10 minutes flat. She orchestrated this wedding like a military campaign, steamrolling my dreams of a rustic vineyard ceremony for this Instagram-ready spectacle. My father, Pastor James Harper, 58, is the heart of our family. A man whose community church preaches love, trust, and second chances. His gray eyes crinkle when he smiles, and his sermons make even atheists reconsider. He thought Ethan was my soulmate. So did I, until the cracks started showing. The tension had been building for weeks, but I was too buried in deadlines to notice. I'd been chasing a story about a local councilman's embezzlement, working 80-hour weeks, while Ethan and Margaret grew closer than a mother-in-law and fiancé should. They'd spend hours strategizing his startup's media blitz, laughing over Pinot Noir in our family's craftsman-style home in Laurelhurst. I thought it was sweet my mom bonding with my future husband. God, I was naive. Then came the first warning sign, sharp as a blade. A month ago, I was driving home from the newsroom when my tire blew out on I-5, nearly sending me into a guardrail. I called AAA, cursing my luck, but the mechanic's words stopped me cold. This wasn't wear and tear. Ma'am, someone slashed this tire clean through. My stomach churned. Who the hell would do that? I brushed it off as a random act. Portland's got its share of crazies, but deep down, something felt wrong. A week later, at a family brunch, Margaret was off. She's usually a vision in tailored blouses, but that morning, her hair was mussed, her smile forced. I spotted a vape pen on her kitchen counter, reeking of cedar cologne. Ethan's cologne. Client meeting. She said when I asked why she was so jumpy, her fingers twisting a napkin to shreds. She's a terrible liar. Always. Has been. Her eyes dart away. Her voice pitches up. I let it slide, but the seed was planted. Then came the anonymous text. A grainy photo landing on my phone like a grenade. Ethan and Margaret at a dive bar in Old Town. Heads bent close, her hand on his arm. The timestamp was 2 a.m. When Ethan told me he was at a board meeting, I called his assistant. He left at noon, she said. My world tilted. The real gut punch came 3 days before the wedding. I was at Margaret's house, picking up seating charts, when I found a small audio recorder tucked under the passenger seat of her Lexus. It wasn't hers, I'd know. I hit play, and my life imploded. Ethan's voice, smooth as silk. After the wedding, we'll be more careful. Marrying Olivia's just optics for the investors. Margaret, breathless. I've wasted years with James. You make me feel alive, Ethan. They laughed, planned hotel meetups, mocked my trust. I sat in that car, hands shaking, as their voices carved up my heart. Someone had planted that recorder, maybe a rival, maybe a whistleblower, but it was my ticket to the truth. I couldn't go home, not to the apartment I shared with Ethan, where his gym bag still held a burner phone I'd found days earlier, stuffed with flirty texts to M. I drove to a cabin in the Oregon woods, paying cash to stay off the grid. My laptop was gone stolen, in a break-into nights before, targeted. I was sure, because it held the audio file I backed up. I wasn't safe. Someone didn't want this truth out. The next morning, my brakes failed on a winding road to the church, my car swerving, inches from a semi-truck's grill. I gripped the wheel, heart in my throat, and pulled over. A mechanic later confirmed the lines were cut. Someone, Ethan, Margaret, a hired thug, wanted me silenced. I wasn't just fighting for my dignity now. I was fighting for my life. At the cabin, I pieced together the evidence, the audio, the burner phone's texts, receipts from Ethan's credit card for hotel rooms in Seattle. I called my colleague Mia, who dug up contact info for every wedding guest tech moguls, influencers. My newsroom nemesis who'd love to see me crash and burn. I looped in Lucas, my old NYU buddy turned videographer, to live stream the ceremony on X. This is gonna go viral, he said, half joking. I wasn't laughing. I showed my dad, James, the audio. His face crumpled. The man who'd baptized babies and married couples reduced to ash. How could she? He whispered. We'll show them, I said. He nodded, his faith shattered, but his love for me unbroken. The morning of the wedding, my phone buzzed with Margaret's texts. Good morning, beautiful bride. The flowers are perfect. Today's your day. Each word was a knife. I showered, staring at myself in the mirror. My dark hair, my father's gray eyes, my mother's sharp cheekbones, traits I once cherished, now tainted. I drove to St. Paul's, the city alive with hipsters and rain-soaked streets. The church was a hive, vendors ranging white orchids, guests snapping selfies. My matron of honor, Sarah, fussed over my veil. You're glowing, Liv, she said. I smiled, but inside, I was a storm dot in the bridal room. I slipped into the lace gown, its weight like armor. Sarah pinned my veil, my grandmother's, a relic of a happier marriage. My dad arrived, his tux crisp, his smile fragile. You're radiant, he said, voice thick. I pulled him aside, the journal and recorder in my bag. Dad read this. Listen. His hands trembled as he heard Margaret's voice, her betrayal laid bare. Celeste, this can't be. He choked. It is, I said, and they're not getting away with it. He sank into a chair, a pastor facing his own. Personal hell. What now? He asked. We walked down that aisle, I said, and we let everyone see who they really are. The organ swelled. Sarah and the bridesmaids glided down the aisle, their sage green dresses swaying. Ethan stood at the altar, all charm and lies, his groomsmen smirking like this was just another deal he'd close. Margaret sat in the front row, her sapphire, dress gleaming, dabbing her eyes with a silk scarf. The perfect mother of the bride. What a performance. The bridal march began, and 250 pairs of eyes turned to me. Dad's arm steadied me as we stepped into the sanctuary. Cameras flashed. Whispers rippled. She looks stunning. Ethan's smile was Oscar-worthy. His hand warm as Dad placed mine in his. Pastor Reynolds started. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here to witness the union of Ethan Caldwell and Olivia Harper. I let him drone on, my pulse sensing with the recorder's weight. Ethan squeezed my hand, whispering, "Ready, babe?" I smiled, razor sharp. You have no idea. The ceremony rolled forward vows, rings, the whole charade. I overheard Margaret and Ethan earlier, whispering in a side room, "If she knows, we're screwed. We need to shut her up." My blood ran cold, but I played my part. Pastor Reynolds reached the objection line, if anyone has just cause. Why these two should not be joined. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Silence. I could have spoken then, could have ended it. But I wanted them to think they'd won. Ethan, do you take Olivia to be your lawfully wedded wife? Ethan's voice was steady. I do, forsaking all others. The lie was so bold it nearly cracked me. Olivia, do you take Ethan? I raised my hand. Actually, I have something to say. The church froze. The organ faltered. Ethan's grip tightened, his smile twitching. Liv, what's wrong? He hissed. I stepped to the microphone, pulling the recorder from my pocket. Before I make this vow, I need to be honest with all of you. Murmurs spread. Margaret's scarf dropped, her face pale. Lucas, in the back, started streaming. 2 days ago, I said, my voice clear, I found proof that my fiancé and my mother have been having an affair. Guests erupted. I hit play on the recorder. Ethan's voice filled the church, marrying Olivia's just optics. Margaret's, you make me feel alive. The crowd exploded shouts, whispers, phones out recording. Ethan lunged for the device, but I yanked it back. Explain this. I snapped. Explain to your investors, your dad, everyone who thought you were a stand-up guy. Margaret stood, stammering. Olivia, this is a misunderstanding. Dad's voice cut through. Sit down, Margaret. She collapsed, sobbing. Ethan's business partner, Greg, shouted, she's lying. It's fake. Half the crowd nodded, loyal to Ethan's charm. The other half glared at him, at Margaret, at the wreckage of their lies. Richard Caldwell stood, face ashen, staring at his son. Is this true? Ethan stammered, Dad, I can explain, but he couldn't. The truth was out, raw and ugly. I turned to the crowd. This isn't revenge. It's truth. I won't build my life on their lies. I walked down the aisle, my gown trailing like a battle flag. Dad followed, his head high, behind us. Chaos reigned, Ethan pleading, Margaret weeping, guests arguing. Team Olivia versus Team Ethan. The church split down the middle. Outside, the Portland rain hit my face like absolution. Lucas caught up, camera still rolling. Holy shit. Liv, you okay? I laughed, wild and free. Never been better. My phone buzzed texts, calls, X notifications. Hashtag Portland wedding scandal was already trending. I'd just torched my old life, but damn, it felt good. The question lingered, sharp as a blade. Who tried to stop me? The slashed tire, the hacked email, the cut break someone wanted me quiet. And they were still out there. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Asterisk Paul's church parking lot gleamed under Portland's gray sky. But it was the fire in my chest that kept me moving. I'd just blown up my wedding, my family, my entire life, with a single press of a button, the recorder. In my pocket felt lighter now, its truth unleashed. But my heart was heavy with the weight of what came next. 250 guests were still inside, shouting, crying, picking sides, Team Olivia versus Team Ethan, like some twisted reality show. Lucas, my videographer friend, jogged up, his camera still rolling, capturing every second of the chaos. For the X live stream. Liv, you're trending. He said, eyes wide. Hashtag Portland wedding scandal is blowing up. You're either a hero or a villain, depending on who you ask. I laughed, a jagged sound, and leaned against my car. Good. Let them talk. But inside, I was unraveling. Who slashed my tire? Who cut my brakes? Who hacked my email? Someone wanted me silenced. And they weren't done yet. It was October 23rd, 2025. And Portland's autumn chill seeped into my bones as I stood in my vintage lace gown, now a symbol of defiance rather than love. The church doors burst open, spilling out a wave of guests, some rushing to their cars, others clustering in knots, phones out, arguing over what they'd just witnessed. Ethan's voice still echoed in my head from the recording, marrying Olivia's just optics. My mother's, Margaret's, laugh, cruel and conspiratorial. You make me feel alive. I'd expose them, but the cost was my world. My dad, Pastor James Harper, emerged from the chaos, his tux rumpled, his gray eyes haunted. Olivia, he said, voice low, we need to go. Now. I nodded, sliding into my car. The engine roared to life, but my hands shook on the wheel. I wasn't just running from the church. I was running from a threat I couldn't yet name. We drove to Dad's house in Laurelhurst, the craftsman-style home where I'd grown up, now tainted by Margaret's betrayal. The silence between us was thick, broken only by the patter of rain on the windshield. I'm sorry, Dad, I whispered, staring at the road. You didn't deserve this. He reached over, squeezing my hand. Neither did you, sweetheart. But you were brave, braver than I've ever been. His voice cracked, and I saw the weight of 30 years of marriage crumbling in his eyes. Margaret had been his rock, his partner in faith. Now she was his. Judas, inside the house, the air was stale, heavy with the ghost of family dinners and Margaret's vanilla candles. I kicked off my heels, the lace gown pulling round me like a shed skin. Dad sank into his armchair, staring at the framed photo of our family on the mantelmate at 16, gap-toothed and grinning, sandwiched between him and Margaret. What now? He asked, voice hollow. I didn't have an answer. Not yet. My phone buzzed relentlessly, texts from Sarah, my matron of honor, begging me to call. Voicemails from my editor, Claire, threatening to fire me if I didn't deliver a story. And a flood of X notifications, half praising my badass move, half calling me a liar out for revenge. The split was vicious. Portland's tech elite rallied behind Ethan, claiming I'd doctored the audio, while my newsroom allies and random strangers hailed me as a feminist icon. The internet was a battlefield, and I was ground zero. Then a new text landed from an unknown number. You think you're clever, but you're not safe. Back off. My breath caught. I showed Dad, and his face hardened. This isn't over, is it? He said. No. I replied, my journalist instincts kicking in. Someone's scared, and I'm going to find out who. I called Lucas, who was still monitoring the Liv stream's fallout. Liv, it's got 2 million views already. He said, Ethan's investors are freaking out. His startup's stock is tanking. I smirked, but it faded fast. Lucas, someone's threatening me. Check the footage. Genuine acting weird at the church. He promised to scrub every frame. I needed answers, and fast. The next morning, I woke in my childhood bedroom. The lace gown crumpled in a corner. My phone was a war zone. Claire's latest voicemail was a screech. Olivia, you're on thin ice. Get me a story. Or you're done. She didn't know I was the story. I showered, pulling on jeans and a hoodie, and headed to the Oregonian's office downtown. The newsroom was a buzz of whispers when I walked in, my colleagues' eyes darting between sympathy and schadenfreude. Claire stormed over, her bob swinging like a guillotine. You've got some nerve, Harper, turning your wedding into a circus. Where's my councilman expose? I leaned in, voice low. Claire, I've got something bigger. Give me 48 hours. She raised an eyebrow but nodded. Don't screw this up. Back at my desk, I dug into the threats. The slashed tire, the cut brakes, the hacked email, the stolen laptop. They weren't random. Someone knew I had the recording before I played it. I pulled up Ethan's burner phone records, which I'd photographed before stashing the device in my safe deposit box. The texts to M were damning, but one number stood out, a burner that wasn't Margaret's. I traced it through a contact at the DMV, a favor from a past story. It led to a name, Greg Voss, Ethan's business partner, the guy who'd screamed. I was lying at the church. Greg, with his slick suits and shark's grin, had millions riding on Ethan's startup. If it tanked, so did he? Was he the one trying to stop me? I drove to Greg's office in the Pearl District, a glass tower screaming. New money. My gut churned as I parked. Something felt off. A black SUV idled across the street, tinted windows hiding the driver. I shook it off and marched inside, flashing my press badge. Greg's receptionist, a nervous 20-something, buzzed me in. Greg lounged behind a desk, all swagger. Olivia, he drawled, come to apologize for your little stunt. I didn't flinch. I want answers, Greg. Why'd you call me a liar? And what's with the burner phone you've been texting Ethan on? His smirk faltered. Just for a second. You're out of your depth, Harper. Walk away. I leaned closer. Or, what? You'll slash another tire. Cut my brakes. His eyes narrowed, but he didn't deny it. Get out. He snapped. I left, heart pounding. The SUV gone when I stepped outside. That night, I met Lucas at a dive bar in southeast Portland. The kind of place with sticky floors and neon signs. He slid me a USB drive. Found something in the footage. He said, voice low. An usher big guy. Scar on his cheek kept circling you before the ceremony. He's not on the guest list. My skin prickled. Got a phase? Lucas nodded, pulling up a still on his phone. The guy looked like hired muscle, not a wedding guest. I'm digging into his ID, Lucas said. But, Liv, this feels heavy. Like, hired goon heavy. I swallowed hard. Ethan and Margaret's affair was bad enough. But if Greg was pulling strings, this was bigger than a cheating scandal. Was it about the startup? Money? Power? The next day, I got a call from Mia, my colleague at the Oregonian. Liv, you need to see this. She sent me a screenshot from post from an anonymous account, claiming I'd faked the audio to sabotage Ethan's company for a rival tech firm. The post had 10,000 retweets, with comments split. Half calling me a whistleblower, half a vindictive ex. The lies were gaining traction, and Ethan was leaning into it, tweeting, disappointed in the false accusations. Truth will come out. I wanted to scream. Instead, I called Dad. They're spinning this, I said. I need to talk to Margaret. He sighed. She's at her sister's in Seattle. But, Olivia, be careful. She's not the woman we thought. I drove to Seattle, the 3-hour trip a blur of rain and rage. Margaret's sister's condo was in Capitol Hill, a sleek high-rise with views of Puget Sound. I knocked, and Margaret answered, her sapphire eyes bloodshot, her blonde hair limp. Olivia, she gasped, stepping back. Please, let me explain. I cut her off, holding up the recorder. Explain this. Explain why you thought screwing my fiancé was worth destroying our family. She flinched, tears spilling. I was lonely. Your father was always at church, and Ethan, he saw me, really saw me. I laughed, bitter. He saw a way to stroke his ego, and you fell for it. Her face crumpled, but I wasn't done. Who's trying to stop me? Margaret. The tire, the brakes, the threats. Who's behind it? She froze, eyes darting. I don't know, she whispered, but her voice shook. Another lie. I left, her sobs echoing behind me. On the drive back, my phone rang an unknown number. Stop digging. Harper, a low voice growled. Or you. Won't walk away next time. The line went dead. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white. Back in Portland, I holed up in a motel, paying cash again. I couldn't trust my apartment. Not after the break-in. Lucas called with a hit on the usher. Name's Vince Russo, ex-con. Works freelance security. Last job was for a shell company, tied to Greg Voss. Bingo. Greg wasn't just Ethan's partner, he was cleaning up their mess. But why? Was it just about the startup? Or was there more? The next morning, I got a break. Mia found a whistleblower, a former intern at Ethan's company, fired for asking too many questions. We met at a coffee shop in St. John's, away from prying eyes. The intern, Tara, was barely 22, nervous but resolute. Ethan's startup isn't what it seems, she said, sliding me a USB drive. They're cooking the books, faking trial data to inflate stock prices. I overheard Ethan and Greg talking about a plan B if you got too close. My pulse spiked. Plan B? Tara nodded. Something about a merger and keeping you quiet. I thanked her, my mind racing. Ethan's affair wasn't just personal, it was a cover for something bigger. Fraud? Maybe. Or worse. That night, I went to Dad's church, needing his calm. He was packing his office, his resignation letter already drafted. I can't preach integrity when my own house is a lie, he said, taping a box of sermon notes. I hugged him, tears burning. You're not the liar, Dad. He smiled, sad, but proud. Neither are you. As we talked, a brick crashed through the window, glass shattering across the floor. A note was tied to it. Last warning. Dad pulled me down, shielding me as we crouched behind his desk. Call the police, he whispered. I did, but my hands shook. This wasn't just a threat anymore. It was war. The cops came, took the note, promised to investigate. I didn't trust them. Half the force golfed with Ethan's dad. I called Lucas. We need to go public. Now, he uploaded the full wedding footage to X, along with Tara's files. By morning, hashtag Portland Weddingland was dwarfed by hashtag Caldwell fraud. The internet erupted. Investors pulled funding. Ethan's stock crashed, and the SEC announced an investigation. Greg vanished. His office cleared out overnight. Ethan tweeted a weak denial, but the tide had turned. My half of the internet cheered. The other half called me a traitor. Claire, my editor, called. Her tone flipped. Olivia, this is Pulitzer material. Keep going. But the threats didn't stop. A black SUV tailed me to the motel, circling like a shark. I moved again, crashing on Lucas's couch. He showed me new footage. Vince Russo meeting Greg in a parking garage, handing over a flash drive. What's on it? I asked. Lucas shrugged. Could be the real trial data. Could be worse. I knew I had to get it. I staked out Greg's last known address, a penthouse in South Waterfront. At midnight, I saw him slip out, tossing a bag in a dumpster. I waited, heart pounding, then fished it out. Inside was a hard drive and a burner phone with a text, Vince, take care of her, permanently. My blood ran cold. Greg wasn't just protecting Ethan. He was protecting himself. I copied the hard drive and sent it to Claire, along with a draft. Expose linking Ethan's fraud to Greg's threats. The next day, I got a call from Richard Caldwell. Ethan's father? Olivia, meet me, please. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a quiet diner in Beaverton, his face haggard. I didn't know, he said, voice breaking. Ethan's my son, but he's lost his way. And Greg, he's dangerous. I leaned in. How dangerous? Richard hesitated. He's tied to some bad people. Investors who don't play nice. I pressed him for names, but he clammed up, fear in his eyes. Just be careful, he said, leaving $100 bill on the table. That night, I uploaded my expose to the Oregonian server, password protected. Claire promised a Sunday front page, but as I left Lucas's apartment, the black SUV was back. It followed me, headlights glaring. I floored it, weaving through Portland's streets, my heart in my throat. The SUV rammed my bumper, nearly sending me into a street light. I swerved into a crowded food truck pod, losing them in the chaos. Shaking, I called Lucas. "I'm done hiding," I said. "Meet me at the church." We gathered at St. Paul's, me, Lucas, Dad, and Tara. The hard drive confirmed everything. Fake trial data, laundered money. A merger meant to bury the evidence. Ethan and Margaret's affair was a distraction, a way to keep me compliant while Greg pulled the strings. I wrote a final piece, naming names, and sent it to Claire. As we left the church, Vince Russo stepped out of the shadows, a gun glinting in his hand. "You should have stopped, Harper." Dad shoved me behind him, but Tara screamed, drawing a crowd. Vince hesitated, then bolted as sirens wailed. The police caught him 2 blocks away. The expose hit Sunday morning, front page, above the fold. Ethan's startup collapsed. His investors fled, and Greg was arrested for fraud and attempted murder. Margaret, shunned by Seattle's elite, sent me a letter begging forgiveness. I burned it. Dad took a job at a small church in Montana, his faith bruised but intact. I moved to San Francisco, a new job at the Chronicle waiting. My inbox overflowed with messages from women who'd seen the live stream, thanking me for choosing truth over silence. I was a hero to some, a villain to others, but I was free, standing on my new balcony, the Bay Bridge sparkling in the distance. I raised a glass of whiskey to the woman I'd become. The threats were gone, the truth was out, and I'd survived. But questions lingered, sharp and unanswered. Who planted the recorder? What else was Greg hiding? And would Ethan ever face me again? I smiled into the night, ready for whatever came. Next, truth was my weapon now, and I wielded it like a blade.